Well, hello, everybody. Thank you, Mehta, for hosting and having us join the call. I'm, just by way of introduction, I'm Tejas Mehta. I'm a program manager on the SharePoint product team. I focus on portals, publishing system, and SharePoint integrations with Microsoft Teams. Prateek, did you want to take a second to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I am Prateek Dudeja. I'm a program manager in SharePoint, and I work closely with Tejas on bringing a lot of SharePoint resources to Teams and making both of these products work better together.
Great. So in this session, we'll talk to you about all of the great stuff that's going on between SharePoint and Teams. We'll recap some of the integrations and capabilities that exist today, and also give kind of a look forward on some of the work that we're doing right now as we continue to deliver on our promise to bring the richness of SharePoint into Teams. All right, so let's dig in. As you might already be aware, we've been on a multi-year journey to reimagine content collaboration experiences within SharePoint. And as part of this reimagination, we've been pretty committed to bringing the best of these experiences into Teams to further bolster healthy collaboration. To share more of this with you, we've split this discussion into two parts. Part one is where we'll walk through a set of capabilities that you can take advantage of today, from adding group and teams capability to your existing team sites, to leveraging many of the integrations that we have in place currently. And then in part two, Prateek will give you a look ahead and give you a sense for the areas that we're currently investing in to kind of make it even better than what we have. So with that, let's get started. Some quick context for everyone. Some of you have probably seen these slides at various events before, but it's important to kind of to set some ground context. Effective content management and collaboration has become critical as we have so many different ways to work together with our teams. So from Microsoft's perspective, OneDrive and SharePoint play a critical central role as the content platform across Microsoft 365, enabling content collaboration across the suite, including, among other surfaces, Microsoft Teams. And if you're on this call, there's a high likelihood that you're already intimately familiar with SharePoint team sites. They really are the backbone of content collab in Microsoft 365. Now, while this session isn't focused on a deep dive into the full suite of team site capabilities, we will show you how you can take advantage of many of their capabilities within Teams. To kind of complete the discussion around the product integration on the Teams side, as you probably already know, Microsoft Teams is a hub for teamwork. It's a chat-based app that enables teams to be more productive by giving them a single place to get all of their work done. With Teams, users can communicate either one-on-one with others or in group chats or via meetings and calls. And they can collaborate on content, which is really the crux of what this discussion is going to be about across Microsoft 365. So not just SharePoint, but Office apps, Planner, Power BI, as well as third-party apps through a number of plugins and integrations, for example, GitHub and Trello. We do hear people ask us sometimes, when should I use Teams versus SharePoint? What scenarios make it more valuable to use one versus the other? But it's pretty important to note that these tools don't compete with one another. They're entirely complementary and both can be used together to enhance team collaboration. So if you're an organization that's actually moving down the path and embracing this new way of working and centralizing all of your work in a single app around persistent chat, from a SharePoint perspective, we celebrate that by delivering the full richness of SharePoint inside of Teams. And if you're an org that's comfortable with and lean towards the flexibility of team sites, then more power to you. The point is you don't have to choose. You actually do get the best of both, and you can work the way that you work. All right, so now we'll kind of work through the first part of the discussion. So it's important as we talk about SharePoint and Teams integration to give a call out to Office 365 groups. In order to actually get all of the benefits of the SharePoint collaboration with Teams, you need to ensure that all of your team sites are group connected. So Groups, as you may already know, is a membership service mastered in Azure Active Directory that lets you choose a set of people that you wish to work with, and you end up getting a set of resources for this group that you can use for collaboration. So for email with Outlook or real-time chat with Teams, tasks with Planner, and of course, SharePoint team sites. Every Office 365 group is backed by a SharePoint team site. So in the context of an Office 365 group, it doesn't matter which collaboration tool you're using. All of the content, the files, the lists, the pages, the news, it's all powered by and served up by SharePoint. Another critical benefit of Office 365 groups is that they govern more than just the membership. Any policy you apply on the group applies to all of the resources within that group. So for example, you can set policies on who can create these entities inside your tenant. You can specify naming policies or expiry policies and really manage the life cycle of all of the resources together rather than individually. So today, if you create a team site from the SharePoint start page, our default behavior out of box is that you do get a team site that is connected to an Office 365 group, which comes with all of the resources that we've been talking about. But if you have existing non-group connected team sites in your tenancy that you'd like to modernize by adding groups and teams capabilities to, you're in luck. And that's in part what a lot of the session is about. We have features to help you kind of go down that modernization journey, and this is a good segue into the demo. I'm going to start here on a classic non-group connected team site. So this is Contoso Procurement UK. This site, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. It's a pretty vanilla team site. There's not a whole lot going on. There are a bunch of files that users have been working on. So there's some file activity clearly. We've got lists and some pages in this site as well. So I'll come back to those elements shortly. But first thing I want to do is really walk through the process of adding an Office 365 group to this classic team site. So I go to the gear menu and I see the option to connect to new Office 365 group. I click on that. And I'm presented with a splash panel here that really kind of tells me what an Office 365 group is and what we plan to do. Really what we want to make sure that users get out of this is that you're informed that all of your existing content in the site, all of the site hierarchy, all of the permissions will remain the same, and that we'll add a new page to the site and mark that as the home page, and that there will be an opportunity to manage the group's membership as we go through the flow. So let's get started. I now have an opportunity here to provide additional metadata for the new Office 365 group that we're creating. We smartly pre-populate the fields based on the existing site properties. For example, we give the group name the same name as the site. You've got the email address. I can make some changes here. Because this is an Office 365 group, I can change the privacy level for the group, but I'm just going to keep it at private. I'm going to head now and click on Connect Group. When I click on Connect Group, what's happening in the background now, you'll see here this creating group, a message here. This is when the new group is actually being created. But while that's happening, we have the opportunity here to add additional owners and members to this new group. Here we also sort of intelligently pre-populate or propose who we think additional owners and members should be for the new group, and that's based on the underlying permissions for the site itself. So I can choose to accept these, I can change it, I can remove them, but note that anyone that you add to the group here will have access to all of the group's resources. So I will click on Finish here. All right, so I think we've been successful. The group has been created. I get redirected to the new page, the home page that's been added for the Contoso Procurement UK page. So a few things to kind of call out just to guarantee that we've been successful. We can see the new header here. You can see that private group kind of gives us an indication of the fact that this is an Office 365 group. If I click on the site title here, I actually get this group card that pops up that gives you kind of links to all of the different group resources. You can actually manage membership directly from here. Another indication that you have been connected to an Office 365 group. In the left navigation, you'll see that we've added some elements as well. So there's a link called Conversations, and that actually takes you to the group's mailbox in Outlook. And you can easily add additional resources from the group in navigation by editing the navigation. So as we discover more and more group entities related to this particular group, you're able to add them here directly. Cancel out of this. One other thing to note is the Groupify process is non-destructive. So the previous homepage, if you actually had customizations on that page and other content that you didn't want to lose, we retain a link to the previous home, so you can actually navigate there. So this site, before we groupified it, was actually pretty active across files, lists, and pages. So this new page has a default layout with a news web part, quick links, a document library. And very interesting here is the site activity web part. You wouldn't have known it from looking at the static page before, but you can see that there's a bunch of activity that's actually taking place within this site. Now, the site activity web part actually does show some information from other group resources as well, but because we've just groupified this, there is not yet any activity in those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to another site that does have activity here. So this is the Mark 8 project team here in Contoso. I'm going to scroll down. You can see that the page is laid out to really suit the needs of the team. And you'll see that the activity web part actually has elements here from other group resources. So there's a couple of planner cards telling me that I've got tasks due today or tomorrow. You'll see that there's an Outlook card here, and these cards capture recent emails that have been sent to the group's mailbox. And then, as you would expect, there are SharePoint activities from the group as well. So I see a page here, and there's a bunch of documents that people happen to be working on. So if I scroll further down, just to kind of give a flavor for some of the other parts on the page, this is kind of a project-based team. So there's a planner web part here. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can lay out the page to really suit your team for what's best in the way that you work. So here we have a planner web part. It shows kind of the different boards of activity. And then if you were to kind of glance here at left nav, there's a few items here. There are some lists. There's, and you can tell that there are definitely pages on this site as well. There's a page here, and if we look down, there's a news web part which kind of calls out there's some news activity as well. So I'm going to quickly hop over to one of the lists here. This just to give you a view into one of the lists that has some custom formatting. So you can see it's got some column formatting here. And you can do if you're familiar with lists, you can do all kinds of things like grouping and filtering by. You can use the filters pane to really drive down to specific items. There's a lot of rich capabilities now that we have inside of lists. And similarly, if I was to go to the document library, in this document library, you'll see that this also has a bunch of custom columns with custom formatting. If you're also familiar, we've got the ability to preview more than 350 file types now. I think the number keeps growing now. Kind of quick inline preview of different file formats directly inside the document library. So a lot of really great capabilities inside of the site itself, but this session is not really about walking through the site capabilities. I wanted to show you how these things light up inside of Teams. So if you look at the left navigation of this site, you'll see that there's a link to Teams. So this is a group that happens to have a team associated with it. So I'm going to switch over to the team now and show you how some of these capabilities show up there. So here I am in the Mark 8 project team. I'm in the general channel. And you'll see there's some chat activity, but I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to start in the Files tab. So the first thing that you'll see, and this is something that is now available worldwide, is kind of a rich representation of the document library. So you get basically the same view that you do from if you're consuming this inside of SharePoint. You get metadata. You have the ability to expose all of your column formatting. You can do the things like grouping by or filtering by. You can actually switch views. You'll see in the command bar, you can actually go and sync the document library locally. Yes, you can actually take advantage of the sync capability. You can group and filter that we mentioned before. You can switch your views. You can take files that you see within the document library. You can actually pin these things to the top. Go back to all documents view. Pin a document here. You can pin it to the top so that if it's an important doc that you want your team to be aware of, you could take advantage of highlighting it here at the top. And like I showed you in the document library, all of those file previews work exactly the same way that they do in the document library. But what you're seeing here really is the power of the SharePoint document library right inside of Teams. This is an example of a shared control that was engineered by the OneDrive and SharePoint team that not only powers the experience that you see here, but also if you were to go into the files, into the OneDrive experience here inside of Teams, that's also powered by the same control. It actually powers our own OneDrive and SharePoint experiences in the web, and also others as well, including the files experience for groups in Outlook. So just quickly, if I was to switch over to the group mailbox, and click on the Files tab here, you have, again, powered by the exact same control, a rich representation of the document library that brings all of the great capabilities that we've been talking about. So I'm going to come back to the team here. I just showed you the document library experience, which is now available in all production tenants. And there's another shared control that I wanted to show you. So if I was to click here on a file and then try to grab a link to it, you'll see that I get a very similar experience here. And this is the sharing dialog that you might be familiar with. And that powers the sharing experiences from OneDrive and SharePoint, from File Explorer, Office Backstage. You've seen this in multiple different places. So again, it's the same familiar control with all of the options at your disposal. So when you're sharing links, you can set the settings in a way and remain confident that recipients will be able to access the files. All right, so that kind of closes out the Files tab here. I'm going to go back to the Conversations tab. As I mentioned before, you'll see that there's some chat activity taking place here and a couple of news posts that pop up here. Now, these news posts are actually coming from the backing team site. And if you go to the general channel here, if I configure this channel has had the SharePoint news connector configured for it. I'll just show that to you right here. And what that means is anytime you publish a news post in the backing team site, it gets funneled right into this channel. And you can see that people can have discussions around the page itself. They can click on the specific news as well. So this is, again, a great way to bring SharePoint content right into Teams. So I think the last bit I want to show you here in the Teams interface is the ability to add pages and lists. So if I click on the SharePoint tab here, I get presented with a list of pages in the backing site. So you can see there's a few here. I will click the home page because I like that to be inside of Teams, and I want that to be one of the tabs that my users see anytime they're inside the collaboration tool. So here you get, again, rich representation of the page framed right here inside of Teams. I can do the exact same thing with a list in that same SharePoint tab. Click on that. I'll choose the list pivot. And let's pick that European accounts list. Great. And that will give you the list. And again, you can work with the list in the same way that you would in the web, using filters pane, grouping by, filtering, all of the, you can actually edit the items themselves right here inside of Teams. So again, our commitment to bringing these rich SharePoint experiences inside of Teams, we continue to bring that capability here. So you can take advantage of that there. All right, so I've showed you a lot of how we're bringing.
Sorry.
Yes.
That's a great segue. Quick question, because that was in a chat, and because there's a lot of developers on the call as well. The question, are SharePoint framework components also exposed in a Teams whenever we are embedding a list view in here? And unless I'm completely mistaken, answer is absolutely, because this is SharePoint rendering this list.
That's right. This is basically today the way this works is it's iframed inside of Teams. There may be some asterisks and nuances about the experience, but generally I think the statement holds true.
Yep. Just wanted to jump on that one because that question came a few times on the chat. So please.
Yeah, no worries. When I'm done presenting, is on, I'll try to address some of the questions in chat as well.
Yep, absolutely.
So cool. So I've showed you some of the SharePoint capabilities here inside of Teams. One thing I want to show you at least, what are we doing in the SharePoint UX here to kind of help show the connection between these entities. I'm going to, in the interest of time, I could create a channel here. I'm not going to create another channel for this team, but I'm going to go back to the site here and show you a couple of things. So if I went to the document library and go into the general folder, so every channel, every standard channel in Teams maps to a folder in the backing site, you'll see a couple of things. You'll see a banner at the top of the document library that tells you that, hey, this folder is connected to a team. You can navigate to it by clicking on Go to Channel Conversation. That command also exists here in the command bar to go to the channel itself. Another kind of interesting thing that we're doing is we've heard a lot of feedback that, the folder in SharePoint and the channel name in Teams are not tightly bound. So we're doing work really to make it much more difficult to get these things out of sync. So I'm going to take this general channel. I'm going to try to delete it. Yep, I want to delete this. I will get an error message saying, hey, you can't delete this here. To delete this folder, you have to go and manage the channel directly in Teams. And you get a similar error message if I try to rename or update the name of the channel itself. You'll notice that Teams here is in the left nav as well. If it wasn't there, you can always add it because Teams is a resource for the backing group, so it will show up in this data control for adding nodes to navigation. And let's see, did I cover everything else that I want to do here? Yeah, I think I'm coming close to wrapping my section. We showed you Groupify. We showed you how to take advantage of your team site capabilities inside of Teams. But the one thing I haven't showed yet is going back to that Contoso Procurement UK site. We've groupified it, but this group does not yet have a team. So we do have a feature today called, the team, well, colloquially we refer to it as Teamify, but it allows you to add a team to this group. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. Click on Create a Team in this banner that shows up in the left nav. Should take a moment. Great. It was successfully created. I click on that, and what this should do, let's open this in the web, is it should take me to the general channel for the new team that was just created. I'm in general. This is Contoso Procurement UK. All right, so there you have it. We kind of did a quick soup to nuts modernization journey from classic team sites all the way to teamified sites. And you'll see that if I was to go back to that site, I'm just going to quickly refresh here. Oops. You'll see that we've added now the Teams navigation upon that Teamify action. All right, so back to the slides. I won't spend time really recapping too much. We went through the modernization journey, Teamify your groups, take advantage of document libraries, lists, and pages, and news inside of Teams. And that's it for part one. I'm going to turn it over to Prateek to show you he gets the fun job, showing you what we're working on.
Well, thank you, Tejas, first of all, for talking about all of the great stuff that exists in Microsoft Teams today and how we can take advantage of all of the great features of SharePoint right from within Teams. I'm going to talk about some of the new stuff that's coming over in the next quarter or so, starting first with Teamify. So Tejas talked about a version of Teamify that you just saw, where if you have a group connected team site, on the bottom left, you had a button to convert that to a Microsoft team. Now, clicking that button took you to the general channel within that team, and what you got essentially was an empty team. A lot of the feedback that we got when we released that feature was that people wanted to take their content along with them. So while they're actually teamifying, they want to select pages, lists, and document libraries that they use day in and day out, along with them as a part of, and make those assets a part of the Microsoft team itself. So we are bringing to you a new version of Teamify within the next quarter, where we will have an experience within the team site, which will allow you to pick the right kind of resources that you want to take with you to Microsoft Teams. So that's one. So what I'll quickly do is I'll walk through the key features that are coming, and then I'll jump into the demo. The next great feature I want to talk about is the new SharePoint Pages tab. This is an experience which allows you to pick pages or content from your SharePoint team site and embed it inside of Teams. You saw an experience that Tejas just showed you, which was a pretty vanilla experience where the lists from the list of pages and lists from that particular team site showed up with just the name. We are making improvements to that experience to make it look richer, help you find content more easily. If you look at the mock, you'll see that you're able to see thumbnails from that particular page. You can see who edited that page and when it was last edited. We've also made improvements to kind of show you the most relevant pages up top, so you can easily find the page that you want to tab. Another feature that we are adding here is the ability to actually tab a page or even a list from a team site that is different from the backing team site. So we've heard this feedback a lot from customers saying that, hey, I have a page in this different team site or a different com site, but it's really relevant for my particular team, and I would like to tab it. Now you can do that by simply pasting the link to that page, and I'll show you that experience as well. So these are two great ways for you to actually bring your content from SharePoint to Teams as you make the transition from taking a SharePoint site that you've been using richly today to Microsoft Teams and using the part of conversations and collaboration within Microsoft Teams. And if things get left behind, or if new things become interesting to you that you would like to tab as a part of the team, you can use the SharePoint Pages tab or the improved experience in the SharePoint tab to do that as well through this experience. Next, I want to talk about a feature that's pretty cool. It's actually a way for us to provide you great adaptive cards inside of Teams, starting from a SharePoint page link. So we are currently working on this today. We don't have a demo for this yet, but essentially what this does is it takes a link of a SharePoint page that a user pastes in the Teams chat, and essentially converts that into an adaptive card. What that basically means is that you get a rich preview with key actions associated for that particular page. We are stressing a lot on making sure that this is secure as well as functional for users, meaning a user will not be able to convert a link to an adaptive card if they do not have access to that particular page. And we are also looking at other functionalities to make sure, other checks to make sure that people who are able to actually convert these links to cards have secure rights to that particular page before the transition actually happens. So I've quickly given you a dump of the key 3 features that we are bringing to SharePoint and Teams over the next few months. Let me jump into a quick demo to show you how these work, and we'll start with the Teamify demo first. So here I am, I'm playing the role of Lydia here, who is a product manager, and she's managing this project called the Mac Eagle project. This is the rich team site that she has today. So you will see here that there's a bunch of pages, lists, document libraries that exist in this particular team site that people in the team make use of on a daily basis to get their work done and to make progress on the project, right? Along with the Teamify action that you see on the bottom left, we're also adding a Teamify action within the tips and tricks menu that exists on the top right. You'll see that there are tips and tricks to make your team site more productive here. And one of the options there is to add Microsoft Teams. So let's click on that. Now, as you click on that, very similar to the Groupify experience that Tejas showed you earlier, we first talk to the user about the key value that they'll get from bringing their resources to Microsoft Teams and how Microsoft Teams can be helpful for them. And then when I press continue, you'll see that I'll get a list of all the resources that actually exist in the team today. So we run some intelligence to figure out a recommended set of resources for you today, things which are really popular in that particular team site right now. And you will see that the Documents tab is pre-selected and cannot be removed. This is because this becomes the Files tab essentially within the general folder. And we also pre-select the Home tab here. Now I can go down and I can select other things that I think are relevant for me. So let's pick a couple of these. So there's a list here on inventory parts tracking that I would like to use. And I think the security onboarding is really important, and anyone who becomes a part of the team site should be able to see the security onboarding. So let's add that. After I've selected the resources that I want, I can say add team. And this will start to create a team with those particular resources. This should just take a minute. Eventually, what will happen is that we will go to, this will launch Microsoft Teams, wherein we will have those particular set of resources show up as tabs within the general channel. So now I'm inside Microsoft Teams, signed in as Lydia. And as soon as this loads, you will be able to see the Mac Eagle project, and I'm on the general channel. Okay, I think there was some issue with the Teamify API because of which the content is actually not moved. But essentially, you will have to take my word for this. Essentially, just like you see the posts and the files tab here, the other tabs show up on the top. And the list, the site page, and the document library that we select will show up as tabs here and will be ready to use for your entire team from within this experience. Let me switch to the second experience that I wanted to talk about, which was around the new SharePoint Pages tab. So here I am inside Teams. I'm part of the team called Contoso Asset Review. And I've gone ahead and created a channel here called Employee Onboarding. This is a channel that is used within the Contoso Assets team to onboard new employees who join this particular team. Now in this team, Alan wants to add a new tab for a particular team site, from a particular team site. So let's see how that will go. Along with the SharePoint app that Tejas showed you earlier, we now have a new app available here called SharePoint Pages. So let me click on that. In the SharePoint Pages app, as soon as it loads, you will see the new UI, where you will see all the rich updates about all the latest pages that exist on this particular site. So as I scroll down, you can see the news page, the home page, and all the other news posts and site pages that have been added in this particular team site. What I can also do is I can actually add a page from any other SharePoint site. So if I click here, I can actually paste the URL to add that. So let's see how that will work. So here's a particular URL from the same tenant. So this is the Contoso Electronics benefits site. And this has a page which talks about personalized training. So I really want all my employees who join the Contoso Asset team to actually have access to this page so they understand how training works in the company and how they can kind of take benefit from it, right? So what I've gone ahead is I've taken the URL of the page and I've copied it. I'll go back to that experience and I'll paste the URL there. As soon as I paste the URL, the save becomes active. clicking on the save button actually will eventually create a new tab here with that particular SharePoint page rendered inside it. So now you have a page inside this particular channel, which was from a different site rather than not from the Contoso Asset Review backing team site for this particular. And as I scroll down, you will see that all the richness of the page with all the links and all the web parts appears properly. There are a couple of things I wanted to call out about this particular experience and also some key considerations there. So this experience actually supports any modern site page or news post. It will not support classic pages, and it will not support admin pages like site usage or site permissions, because we have created this primarily as a consumption experience inside Teams, letting your users access the content that they want to see from within Teams itself. The person who is trying to tab that page needs to have access to the page, otherwise the paste URL screen will return an error. People who do not have access to this page in the team will actually not see the page and will see the request access page in its place. So essentially tabbing the page here does not change the permissions of the original page. So whoever actually originally had permissions to this particular personalized training page continues to have permission, and we do not change permissions as you tab that page in. If there are employees who join this particular team who did not have access to the original page, they will not see that page and they will see a request access flow. So they have to go through that flow to actually get to see the content within that page as well. We're also doing a bunch of reliability improvements within the SharePoint page experiences inside of Teams. So clicking on different kinds of links as well as rendering of web parts should get better over time. We've already made a whole bunch of improvements so that link experiences become very consistent. So you will see that when you click on modern page links, they will render inside of the Teams experience itself, and there are less and less experiences which will throw users out to the browser. So those are the two key experiences I wanted to show you in the demo, the Teamify experience, which unfortunately did not go through, and also the SharePoint pages experience. The last thing I want to show you is the SharePoint tab experience as well, because we've improved the experience here as well. So as the SharePoint tab loads, you will see the same rich UI that was just visible in the SharePoint pages tab as well. So here you can see the list of SharePoint pages that belong to this particular team site. You can see that these are from the site called Contoso Asset Review. If I go to the list section, I can see that there's a list also associated with this particular team site, and that shows up as well. Going to the paste URL screen. Now in this case, it lets me paste a link to the page or the list. So I can even get in a list and tab it from here to make that a part of the SharePoint team site. And then all the rich capabilities that Tejas talked about using your list from within Teams and getting all the great conditional formatting, grouping, and all the other features that you need to get your work done, all of them become available to you to kind of function within Teams as you go through your work. So that is primarily what I wanted to talk about. This is what we want to leave you with in the end. We just talked about modernizing your classic sites and getting them to become group connected. He talked about that experience and how you can actually add a whole bunch of Office 365 services through very minimal effort by connecting your Office 365 groups. Then I talked about the new improved Teamify experiences, which is coming soon. So when you have a group connected team site, get it Teamified and take all of your rich content, including pages, lists, and document libraries along with you. Unlike what happened right now in the actual experience, it will actually get tabbed as a part of the Microsoft team in the general channel. And if you forget to take anything, or if new resources become useful or relevant at different points in time, you can always go to the SharePoint Pages tab or the SharePoint tab and find the pages and list, whether they are from that particular team site or even from any other experience outside of that team site, and bring those to Microsoft Teams as well. That's all I had with we can take questions now if there are any.
Yeah, there's quite a few questions. I think Tejas is answering most of them. There was an interesting one from Olivia, which I didn't yet see, at least an answer from Tejas. Can you actually link a hidden list to a SharePoint as a tab? I think you can, as long as you know the URL, because the hidden list is actually available as long as you know the URL. It's not just visible in the SharePoint UX, but I don't know if we're filtering that from a pick of the list. So.
Yeah, I think that in the way the SharePoint tab works today, if the list doesn't show up in the backing list, you wouldn't be able to pick it. So that's one. I think there's another constraint as well, and I don't know off the top of my head, but I think there are different list types that won't show up in that list as well. I don't know, Prateek, if you know off the top of your head, but like the calendar list type, there's certain list types that just don't appear in that standard list. I think we've got to.
Yeah, it's probably going to do something with the different kind of views. So if your list has views that are not yet supported in modern, I think those are the ones that don't show up or will not get, where you might not get the most optimal experience when you tab them inside Teams, at least not right now.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Now, Oliver has a really good one because a lot of our customers are using still metadata around documents. And when will be the document or edit metadata of document libraries or a document in the Teams?
I can take that one. It's coming soon. I don't think I can provide a date for this yet, but again, in the earlier part of the discussion, we've built the shareable control for document libraries, which includes metadata editing capabilities in the details pane. So the Teams org is working on this right now, and when they kind of pick up the latest build for the control, that capability will come through as well. So it's not that we don't want to have it there. It's just that sometimes there's a little bit of a lag between sort of the capabilities that we light up inside our control and when it shows up in other experiences.
Yep. That's a good one. And then there was a question related on integration of classic pages. Well, not supported by default, so it's only for modern, right, Tejas? Just recapping that one, you mentioned that already.
Yeah, but that's right.
Yeah. Scanning on things, will Teams replace Skype? Yeah, that is absolutely the direction.
I couldn't keep up with all of the questions, so
yeah, there's quite a few of them, which is a good sign because that means that there's a interest on your topic. So, and we did unfortunately hit the 250 attendees again today, so we got messages that people were unable to join. So, it's a slightly unfortunate limitation. So, any ad hoc other questions which we should ask from Tejas and Prateek? Ability to hide customized left nav in Team sites for the embedding. I think when you're embedding a Team site, the left navigation isn't visible unless I'm completely mistaken.
That's correct. So today the experience is we strip out navigation elements and the headers, and that's in part to reduce the redundancy when you're consuming this content inside of Teams. One, there's a real estate problem when you have too much of this Chrome showing up Chrome within Chrome, which kind of gives you this weird inception-y experience. But two, there are a number of elements that are kind of duplicated from inside of the Teams shell as well. So when we're embedding pages and lists inside of Teams today, we do strip that out.
Yep, makes sense. And there in general, there was a few questions related on the let's say awkwardness. There's certain things related on the modern pages behavior, and obviously all of this is getting worked on all the time, so there are improvements going from Tejas and Prateek and the engineering all the time on those features. The same applies in general for example, Teams performance or SharePoint Online performance. There is massive investments on those areas, so I'm trying to make sure that the performance is getting better and better and better. That's, to be fair, it's kind of a classic challenge within the engineering side. The more features you add, the more you need to also pay attention on the performance, because every single feature has a performance task, so to say. So, but that's absolutely something which is in general being looked on. Any other questions? We are closing the hour anyway. I think Alexei is asking, will SPFX customizers be available across file experience? I think we actually mentioned that the SharePoint framework experiences should be already functioning on the modern lists and libraries. So they should be working. And if they aren't yet, then they will be there in the future, because obviously it is a SharePoint control, right, Tejas?
Yes, it is. So I think the one question that I saw from Alex is that he's seeing some empty cells. It might be worthwhile just pinging me directly. I can connect you with the right counterpart of mine that can help answer that question.
Yeah, I can just add the issue to the SPDev docs as well. So it works for lists, but it doesn't work for document libraries.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, these kinds of gaps, our goal is to get to 100% parity, and we know that we're not there in all cases. So yeah, if you can highlight that, we'll make sure that it gets visibility.
Cool, thank you.
And maybe, thanks, Alex. And maybe the last one for now, any time frame for the multiple windows in Teams. To be fair, we're not from the Teams organization. So all of the people in this call are basically representing the non-Teams UX organization.
That's right.
So we can't really provide any insight on that one. Yeah. But thank you, Tejas. Thank you, Prateek. Any last words from Tejas from you?
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. This is great. We are really excited about the work that we're doing here. You've caught a glimpse of some of the things that we wanted to show you publicly, but know that there's a huge backlog of other great integrations that we've dreamt up. So stay tuned.
Sounds awesome. Sounds awesome. More within a month or so within SPC and build timeframe, but and definitely by that time there will be more news. But thank you everybody for joining.